Hi there, this is Eshu. I'm the abbot here at Zenwest Buddhist Society. This Living Zen-podcast is just one of the many resources we've created at Zenwest to make Zen practice and training more available and accessible to people all over the world. Instructional videos, printable resources, and much, much more are also available on our website at www.zenwest.ca. If you're a regular listener, I'd love to hear from you. So please drop me an email at office@zenwest.ca and let me know who you are, how you got started, and what brought you to Zen. Everything we make available in person and online at Zenwest is only possible because of the support of our members and associates, people like you. If the efforts of our community are making a difference in your life, I'd like to invite you to show your support and take part in making it happen by becoming an associate or member of the Zenwest Sangha. You can do this by clicking the Join Us tab on our website at www.zenwest.ca. Thank you for your support, and thanks for listening.
That was a lovely sit this morning to just be in the silence, pre-dawn silence. And for me, the silence is very rich. I think the more that we become skillful at just sitting, the more we become a little bit like a sponge that soaks up the background silence or stillness. And that's very restorative. Sometimes even transformative. It's the same silence and stillness from which this very universe was born. Before even space and time were manifest, there was this extremely powerful stillness or silence that exploded on the scene as the Big Bang and became all of this. But even though it manifests now in so many myriad forms, the original silence and stillness is still obviously present. I mean, here it is in everything, as everything. And we're very fortunate that through our Zazen practice, we can come to be aware or conscious of the very waters in which we swim. When there's no overt sound, just the stillness, if we are listening carefully enough, and by listening I don't mean simply with our ears, but with every pore and fiber of our being. Zen Master Mumon says in his commentary to the first koan in the Mumonkan that we are to make our whole body one great inquiry, listening with our 360 bones and 84,000 pores, making our whole body one great inquiry. So when we sit, breathe, and listen with that kind of listening, then indeed we start to become aware of the power within the silence and stillness itself. You can feel it in the floor and in the fireplace and in the walls and in the ceiling and in the standing trees when there is no wind. Obviously, this morning we had a beautiful gust of wind, and we can hear the trees outside in the wind. And that too is a manifestation of this underlying background silence, stillness, power, quiet power. And in some ways it's easier to recognize when the wind blows or the rain falls. But even though it's easier to recognize, we must get to a place in our practice where we can recognize the same power, stillness, silence, radiating, vibrating, when there is no wind, like the first part of our sit. Just before a symphony starts, if you're going to the symphony and you know what piece of music is going to be played, or even if you don't, there's this raw potential. All the musicians are there, the conductor's there, and he waves his baton, and nothing's happened. And yet you feel the immediacy of something's about to spring forth from the silence on the downbeat. That's a lot like the sound of one hand clapping. It's a little like a conductor's baton. And all of this becomes manifest out of that silence. And when the wind comes up and the rain comes up, like this morning, we're listening to the symphony of now. And we're so blessed to have a practice that allows us to really listen gently yet attentively and with a deep heart to the symphony of now. When we can do that off the cushion, not just inside the Zendo, or not just while doing walking meditation or kinhin, but out in our daily lives, if we become capable of recognizing the symphony of now coming out of the silence and the stillness in our daily, ordinary lives, then our practice really comes to fruition and demonstrates its usefulness. If our capacity to listen and hear is limited to the Zendo, of course it's very limited and narrow practice. But if we use this practice in the Zendo as a stepping stone to our daily activities and life, interacting with our family, interacting with our vocations, interacting with people on the street, interacting with the political realm, the social realm, the service realm, And we can, even in glimpses, maintain our awareness of the underlying silence and stillness, quiet power that is radiating and manifesting as this symphony of now, then we're much more likely to see clearly what needs doing and have the energy to do it in a way that is that benefits all creatures, great and small, animate and inanimate. Our actions become harmonious and therefore beneficial with circumstances. And that's really where the rubber meets the road in terms of our practice. The Zendo is just the laboratory in which to learn how to listen and to hear and to act mindfully and caringly. But this is just at best, it's meant to be just a stepping stone into our daily, ordinary activities outside of the Zendo. The Heart Sutra has a lot of no's in it. No eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no seeing, no hearing, no smelling, no tasting, no touching, no thinking. No attainment. Lots of no's, no, 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 no. All of those no's are and the Romanized syllable is mu, mu. And mu is the way that we vocalize. It's our syllable for vocalizing this background silence, stillness, quiet power that gives birth to and is currently manifesting as this universe and the symphony of now. The literal translation is no, not, nothing. But it's a hell of a nothing that gives rise to all of this. And you and me, and our awareness. The Heart Sutra ends with Gyate, Gyate, Para, Gyate, Parasam, Gyate, Bodhisattva. This is not literally translated, even in our English translation. But taking a rough stab at it, it says that the awakened mind sees the world clearly as this and that, you and me, but also at the same time has awareness of the underlying ground of being, which we can call mu, or silence, or stillness, or quiet power, or pregnant nothing. And when we can move in this world, discriminating clearly between this and that, and at the same time aware that all of those discriminations are supported and animated by the stillness, the silence. When we see both ways at once, we call that the awakened mind. If you're seeing only one way or the other, with your discriminating mind, or we could say with your mu mind or no mind, it's lopsided. We have to be able to see the world in both ways at once in order to be effective, beneficial, and truly have a caring heart in our response to the world and to the circumstances in which we find ourselves. It's much easier for the ego to take a back seat when we are seeing that way. But the ego is so tricky that oftentimes it, in pridefulness, or thinking that, oh, I'm special because I hear the silence or see the silence or hear the quiet power. We start thinking we're special or that we are important or that we are superior. And of course that's just bullshit. If anything, coming aware of the quiet stillness that is alive is meant to be completely humbling and really should allow our ego to take a back seat. But the ego is so persistent to want to take credit where no credit is due. So we have to watch out. Even after having a penetrating experience and deepening our capacity to see clearly, we really have to watch out and take care not to get caught in grandiosity, especially if earlier in our life we have been caught by self-deprecating diminishment. Once you break through, it's very easy to switch over to grandiosity. But that's just as big a mistake as thinking that we're fundamentally unworthy. Anyway, those are my remarks this morning from listening to the silence and then the manifest symphony of wind and rain. We couldn't be more fortunate to have the time in our lives to sit, breathe, and listen. I do want to open it up for anyone's comment or question.
Just clarification on one statement. Did you say, I thought I heard you say, awareness also comes out of this silence?
An expansion of our awareness comes out of learning how to listen to the background presence, silence, stillness. That's an expansion of our awareness beyond discriminating between this and that, which we're already very good at. But we're not so good at hearing the very subtle power inside the stillness and the silence. And that's an expansion of our awareness.
My question. I'm always balancing, trying to find a place to introduce what I do, just sitting, to people I know, people I love, people I care for. whether to do it or not is often a question, and sometimes it just pops up. And sometimes it's very helpful when it pops up, and sometimes it's not. So, like, and there's that thing, the grandiosity you talk about. It's difficult. I just find it very difficult to talk about, and sometimes I think it's better not to talk about it at all, but then that seems to be impossible to maintain either. So any thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's no formula or for right and wrong about anything, including about when to talk about it and when not to talk about it. So you have to let your skillfulness at reading the circumstances and staying humble, which is to say that the ego is in the back seat and our deeper self, if you call it that, is more in the front seat. Then you learn how to trust that your deeper self is responding naturally and appropriately to circumstances, and there's no formula for that. And we always have doubt that keeps us vigilant about whether or not I'm being directed by my smaller ego self, or I can learn how to trust the deeper water of that self or no self, which I want in the driver's seat, but isn't always in the driver's seat. So it's really learning how to discern who's in the driver's seat, and learning how to recognize my ego and say, no, this is not the time. Or to recognize the deeper current and say, yes, I have to go with this even if it feels uncomfortable. The closest thing that we have to a instruction manual is in the precepts, the 10 precepts, and the 4 Bodhisattva vows. The principal one being Shudro Muhan Zegando, this vow, our great vow to be a caring, beneficial spirit in all circumstances towards all beings. That's the overall guide. Precepts sustain and support that vow, and it's the best kind of check to whether or not ego's leading the show or the deeper waters are.
My question is fuzzy. I'm not sure I will be able to actually put it out, but it is around being beneficial, benefiting this expanding universe. Well, there's nothing. I don't quite. The two are separate for me, and I haven't quite found a way to bring them together.
I think of beneficial as not saving or fixing, as just acting in this world, in this our real world, with a caring heart. So it's not so difficult if I can learn how to discern my own caring heart. If I'm responding to the world from a caring peaceful place, that will be exactly what needs doing. I watch the trees and the plants and the bees and the birds do it. They don't have any thinking about it. They don't have any ego to get in the way. They're just doing what they need to be doing that's so seamless and in harmony with their surroundings and the environment. And it's really much more simple than we make it out to be. We have so many extra layers that make it complex. I find whatever we call enlightenment is really uncovering the simplicity that's already there, and just getting rid of the many layers of usually thinking and our egoistic complications and confusions, which layer on top of the simplicity. So the tree is just caring for its environment by standing there, converting carbon dioxide into oxygen for all beings, great and small, and it not even thinking about all beings, great and small, just doing its thing. And it's really much more natural and simple, and whenever I think it's complicated, I'm sure I'm off base.
Thanks for listening to the Living Zen podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.